Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Pamela Larde. I am the Director of Education for the Institute of Coaching. And I'm really excited today to have Farah Jamil joining me today to talk about some of the misconceptions of ADHD. If you have a chance and you're a member of the IOC, I really encourage you to go back and check out the recording for that presentation because there's just so much important information, new developments, misconceptions that exist out there when it comes to ADHD. Now, I just want to give you a little bit about our guest. She is the founder of Muslim ADHDers. She's a health executive, a certified executive coach, and a certified ADHD life coach, as well as a coach instructor and a global speaker. She's hosted the first global Muslim ADHDers virtual summit with 14 speakers and 1,500 plus registrants. She's an Ivy League graduate with a master in health administration and has the ACC credential. She's a fellow here at the Institute of Coaching. And she has recently spoken to global audiences such as the World Business and Executive Coach Summit and on neurodiversity and navigating ADHD in the workplace. Also, she was selected as one of 36 global executive coaches in the 2020 Inc. 5,000 Vision Conference for the fastest growing U.S. private companies. So you're busy. You've got a lot of amazing things that you're doing. So welcome. And I'm so excited and engaging in this conversation with you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I want to know, how you got into this work. What is your personal story as it pertains to ADHD and how did this come across, your world?
Yeah, I mean, this was not something I ever expected. I didn't get diagnosed with ADHD until I was an adult.
Okay.
So for me, I honestly didn't expect it. I knew that I always had these struggles with procrastination, time management, having a really busy brain, being a verbal processor. So, I'll think out loud sometimes. But I didn't recognize that these could be indicators of attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And it was by accident that I found out that I had it. I was actually going to a psychologist to help me with time management. There was a time when procrastination worked in my favor because I needed that stress to get things done. And my friends in school would get so mad at me because they would spend a week on an assignment. I would do it the night before and I would get a better grade than them. And they're like, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. I just couldn't focus until I had that stress. But that hasn't been working as well anymore. I can still do it sometimes, but to be honest, I don't like doing that anymore. I don't like waiting until the last minute. So when I talked to the psychologist about time management, it just wasn't working. And it was just by chance I saw a program with the journalist Lisa Ling from the US, who was interviewing a physician scientist who was talking about ADHD. And when he was describing some of the symptoms, she said to him, wait, that sounds like me. And I'm saying to the screen, wait, that sounds like me too. And so he assessed her and asked her several questions. And I could relate to a lot of that. So I went to my psychologist and I said, I think I have ADHD. And he said, no, you don't. I said, what do you mean? He's like, nah, you've got a full-time job. You're an Ivy League graduate. You've got loving family and friends. You don't have it. So there's a thing called the Diagnostic Statistical Manual for Mental Disorders, so DSM-5, that's used by clinicians and psychologists, including psychologists and psychiatrists, physicians, etc. So I said to him, let's take down the DSM-5 and go through it together. I don't know where I found that insight to say that.
Right.
But he took it down, we went through it, and he said, oh, wow, you've got ADHD. I said, yeah, I know.
So let me just stop you there for a second because, and I'm glad that you spelled it out because I introduced this saying ADHD with the assumption, oh, we all know what that is, but you broke it down, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, correct?
That's correct.
What does this actually mean? How is this defined? Because we have all these assumptions about what we think it means. The way you describe that it shows up in you can be very different for other people, from what I understand. So, what is ADHD?
That's right. So the saying is, if you've met one person with ADHD, then you've met one person with ADHD, because we can all present so differently.
Mm,
It's like for those of us who may wear glasses or contacts, if you don't have 20/20 vision, you can't look at someone's eyes and be like, oh, I think this is your prescription. You have to get it assessed by an optometrist or an ophthalmologist.
right.
So people may have glasses, but we all have different prescriptions. So you can't swap with somebody else. So
Mhm.
even if you see two people wearing glasses, that doesn't mean that they have the exact same prescription.
Good analogy.
Yeah, the same numbers. So, and that analogy is courtesy of Lori Dupar from the International ADHD Coach Training Center, the IX Center,
Mm,
where I'm a coach instructor. But there
okay.
are three types of ADHD. There's hyperactive, there's inattentive, and there's combined. So I happen to be combined.
Okay.
And with the hyperactive, sometimes this is described as some people having difficulty sitting still. So we always think about the little boys who were like, bouncing off the walls. They're the ones who tend to get diagnosed very quickly because of that hyperactivity.
Mhm.
But hyperactivity is also internal. When you have that busy brain, when, like I was saying before, a verbal processor, if you talk a lot, that can also be an indicator of hyperactivity.
Yeah.
If someone like fidgets a lot, if they feel restless, if they interrupt a lot because they're so eager to
Mhm.
like join the conversation and they don't want to lose their thought, that could be the hyperactive. The
That's interesting. Oh, so go ahead. No, I'm just thinking hyperactive brain versus hyperactive physical activity. That's such an important distinction, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, that's okay. And that's why for a while in the late 80s and 90s, some people used the term ADD,
Yeah.
attention deficit disorder, without the H, because they thought, oh, if I don't have that physical hyperactivity, I don't have that. But
Hmm.
now the common term of ADHD is used because now we're recognizing that hyperactivity is not just physical and external,
Got it.
hyperactivity is also internal.
Oh, thank you for saying that, because that was one of the questions that came up in the chat box. Does the H always have to be present? But I do want to address another question that came up in the chat box, or another point
Sure.
that we were going to make. I have it like in my fourth question, but we need to address it now,
Mhm.
because and I just love that somebody brought this up. But let me see, where is it? Is it really a disorder? Or is it just a difference? And I'll ask the question as I was going to ask it, but the word diagnosis alone seems to characterize ADHD as a negative deficit, in a negative and deficit light. And from a neurodiversity lens, how can we look at it differently? But I love the way that, and I should give credit to the person who said it, Betsy Salkind. She said, "Is it really a disorder, or is it just a difference?"
Great question. And this is something that's been talked a lot in the ADHD community because for many, they don't like the term disorder.
Mm-hmm.
It really bothers them. And then there are those who are like, no, this is a disorder. Like for that individual, it is so debilitating that they resonate with that term. So there have been some discussions about the terminology. I know that there have been people trying to come up with different terms for it to describe it. Some people have their own way of describing it, but one that has just been recently created is VAST, VAST. That's for variable attention stimulus trait. And this term was developed by two Harvard trained psychiatrists, Dr. Ned Hallowell and Dr. John Rady. And the reason why, and by the way, I believe they both have ADHD. I know Dr. Hallowell does, and I think Dr. Rady does too. But they created this term because they wanted to draw attention to the fact that this is more about ADHDers being drawn to high stimulation situations, and that our attention varies
Mm.
based on the level of stimulation. So it's not necessarily attention deficit. It's that our attention is dependent or
Mm.
or is varied based on the level of stimulation. So yeah, if we're super bored, it's really hard for us to feel like stimulated to do anything. because our attention is just not there, right? But,
Right.
if we're in certain situations where there's like a lot of high stimulation, maybe that could be, in someone's job. Like if we think about an emergency room physician, they're like constantly on the go. That could be a great career for someone with ADHD, depending if that's their area of interest, or
That's
like being one of those adrenaline junkies. I know for myself, I was like, okay, this is why I've always wanted my pilot's license and my motorcycle license, because
ah.
I love to go
Mhm.
fast.
Mhm.
And my parents were like, please don't.
I love it because it's not something everybody can resonate with wanting to have that extra stimulation. Somebody is asking if you can say, and thank you, Danielle, for putting the link in the conversation. But if you can say what the acronym for VAST stands for once again.
Oh, of course. So variable attention stimulus trait.
Okay.
So this is
I
a very recent term.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
somebody found a link to it, so that's
Great.
great. I'll have to check it out when we get off of here. So thank you for breaking that down for us.
Mhm.
My other question is, with the absence or the presence of the H, the hyperactivity, is there a form of ADHD that is more mellowing? Somebody just mentioned here that they'll fall asleep when they sit
Mhm.
still.
Yeah.
Is there what would that be?
So that falls under the three types. So the hyperactive, inattentive, and combined. So that's a great segue into the next one, inattentive. So
Okay.
for those who may present as inattentive, they're the ones who, maybe the daydreamers.
Mhm.
They're the ones who may have difficulty organizing or finishing tasks. They might be the ones who have difficulty following detailed instructions and conversations. They could be easily distracted and make careless mistakes, and they often lose things.
Mm.
And it could be those who fall asleep. So for me, being combined, I've got that internal hyperactivity with my busy brain and being able to talk, but also if I'm like thinking, okay, I need to work on this now. And I'm sitting there and I'm having a hard time transitioning from like the couch to like whatever thing I want to do. My brain knows exactly what it needs to do succeed. My body won't cooperate. I call it
Mhm.
the brain body disconnect. And I'm sure many people call it that. It's not just me. But I want to do something. My brain wants to do something. My body's like, nope, let's go to
Mm.
sleep.
So I
And it
would
could be
imagine
that.
there's go ahead.
No, I was gonna say it's that feeling of overwhelm sometimes. When we have that feeling of overwhelm, that can cause many of us ADHDers to actually fall asleep.
Just stop. Uh-huh. Right. Just shut down in some
Just
way.
shut down.
I
Yeah.
know several people who do this and they feel an incredible amount of guilt. And others who have kind of surpassed the guilt and said, I have strategies that I've put into place to address when I know this is coming on. And so I want to transition a little bit into the coaching because what is the role of a coach when they are working with a client who has ADHD?
Great question. So I've trained both as an executive coach and an ADHD coach because I'm a health executive myself. That's how I started. And then after my diagnosis, I made that decision to also train as an ADHD coach because there is that difference.
Mhm.
As an ADHD coach, especially like in my like as part of our curriculum, we learned about the brain. We learned about what are the areas that really impact us. So that includes the executive function part of the brain.
Right.
And this is where we do a lot of work with our clients because with the executive function, these are things that we struggle with so much. So this
Mm.
could be like, um, planning and prioritizing because we have so many things that we want to do. And we're like, okay, I've got all these things. And then we end up doing nothing because we're so paralyzed.
Yes.
We have such a hard time prioritizing. Doing that task initiation, like I said, going from the couch to another task or going from the office to a social situation. For some people, they find it difficult that once they're home from work, they have a hard time then transitioning to going to a social event
Mm.
because now they're like, okay, great. Well, now I have to like find, other clothes to wear. I have to make sure it's ironed. And, I'm actually really tired. Like, do I have to really go? I would just rather just sit at home and watch TV, even though I love my friends.
Yeah.
And then they end up canceling because transitioning from work mode to social mode can be difficult for some of us. And the organization, emotional regulation, impulse control, these are all things that ADHDers may struggle with because their executive function of the brain is impaired. And the executive function is like your own executive assistant.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a fantastic executive assistant who can help keep you organized, who's proactive, making sure that you get out the door on time for your meetings and you have all your materials, life is great.
It's a great way to look at that. Yeah.
Yeah. But when you have an executive assistant who just kind of sits around and be like, oh, what? You wanted me to do something?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, sorry. Here's your cold coffee when you asked for tea. And your files are just like all over the place. When you don't have a great executive assistant, life is not so good.
Yeah, gosh, that's again another great analogy. And so I would imagine, and I mentioned strategies. I'm wondering, is that the approach? Because again, I don't have a history that I know of with ADHD, but everything you're saying, I'm thinking, oh wait, I think this is me. But I have to, when I am sitting on the couch and I have things to do, I have to physically leave the house, or I have to do something different. I have to be in a different setting, or I will do the shutdown thing. I will go to sleep in a heartbeat. And so I wonder, is it a matter of strategies, or is it deeper than that? I know there's medication. I know there's forms of therapy. What does one need, and what does a coach, how does that come in with coaching?
So ADHD coaching is all about helping our clients find the right structure and support systems for their brain.
Got it.
So just like with glasses, you do the eye exam and then you find the right prescription and the right way to support your eyes. For some people, that's going to be glasses. For some, that's going to be contact lenses. For some, that's going to be bifocals, trifocals, progressives. And for some, it'll be laser eye surgery. It's going to be all sorts of things based on each person.
Yeah.
So with ADHD, each of my clients, they're all going to present differently and they're all going to have different things that they want to work on. There are some, now again, this is going to be dependent on certain people. For some people, they see many of their strengths as their ADHD superpowers. And for others, they don't see it that way. And that's fine. I mean, everyone has a different way of looking at it.
Yeah.
But for many of us ADHDers, we have so many strengths, things that a neurotypical may not understand. We see the world differently. That's why you have so many amazing innovators and entrepreneurs who are ADHDers, including Sir Richard Branson, who is the creator of Virgin Atlantic. He has ADHD. You have Steve Jobs, who is suspected of having ADHD. He's one who created Apple and the iPhone.
Right.
Who would have thought that you could have a computer in the palm of your hand that can also be a phone, that can also be like, a place where you have like your calendar. And I'm sure if he had said these ideas to certain people, they'd be like, what are you talking about? That's
one thing at a time. Yeah. Focus on
one thing at a time.
Don't try to,
But with us, because we see the world a little bit differently, that's what gives us insights into things that maybe others wouldn't have. And that's why you have people, especially ADHDers, who may be entrepreneurs and innovators and scientists, and in every industry, including entertainment, because they bring something that others don't have. So it does make us, for many of us, we feel that if we had the choice, there are certain things that our ADHD gives us that could be taken away, and maybe life wouldn't be the same. But again, that depends on each person. So I look at what is it that they want to work on? What is it that they need the support for their brain? And then we come up with the structures that they need. And as coaches, what we know is that our clients have the answer. And they will come up with a better solution than any of us coaches. So it's our job to really listen, actively listen, and ask those questions to help them dig deep and find those resources and those structures that's going to work specifically for them.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think what you said about the people who we know who are famous, who have ADHD, who've created all of these amazing things, only drives the point home even further. And somebody in the comments said, no, it is a disorder. And you really kind of doubled down on that. And I respect that viewpoint, but I also I find it difficult to sort of put people in a box and say you have a disorder and the rest of us are normal and you're not. That I struggle with that, right? Because that what you're saying is that people are their unique take on the world brings the gift of. So I don't know if you've heard of this term. It's polymath. And a polymath is somebody who has a wide range of interests. They draw from a lot of different disciplines, literature, mathematics, science, and they pull all of this together to create solutions. And a lot of us are told, and I say us because I do claim to be a polymath, but a lot of us are told you need to just focus on one thing. You can't, you're all over the place. Bring it home. And to us, it is home. That is how we bring it home. And so I'm curious to know if there are parallels with that concept of being a polymath and what you see and what you experience with ADHD.
Let me put it to you this way. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a pilot. I wanted to be a race car driver. I wanted to be in the science field. I wanted to be an astronaut. I mean, to be honest, I'm like, why can't I just do all of them? I felt so limited when like, no, you have to pick one.
Yeah.
And so I think and again, I can't speak for every ADHDer because again, sure, we all present differently. Sure. But for those who have this concept of wanting to do a lot of things and actually probably being good at a lot of things, I think that can resonate with many ADHDers. And there are some who have ADHD and autism, as an example. And that gives them, again, another really unique perspective on the world. They may be the ones who can, because for some ADHDers, they may miss details. But for some who have autism and ADHD, actually, they are great at finding those details. Yes. They are fantastic at digging deep and diving into research. They can be like your star researchers, perhaps, if that's what interests them. Right. So for Trevor Noah, for example, he has ADHD and depression from what I understand. Right. And he's a comedian. So when he was initially diagnosed with depression and they tried to, treat that, it wasn't quite right. But then when he also got the ADHD diagnosis as the, co-occurring condition, and then they were able to provide the support that way, he soared. Yeah. So so it really depends on each individual. For many ADHDers with whom I've interacted, they have so many interests in different areas. And sometimes they're shy to tell me that. Yeah. So I'm like, don't be shy. What are the things that if you could wave a magic wand, if you didn't have to worry about any limitations like money or time, anything like that, what are things that you would want to do? Yeah. What would give you that joy? Yeah. And then we go from there.
So somebody asked a question, and I have another question I really need to get to, but somebody did make a point, and I think you kind of just answered it, about how we work with children who have ADHD. And particularly they asked about their executive functioning and helping them, with that. So maybe if you want to address that a little bit, but I do have a question that I want to get to that I make sure we don't miss.
Sure. So I do have a couple of clients who are kids. And to be honest with you, I never thought that I would do that. I always wanted to focus on adults because it kind of scared me. That, oh no, I don't know if I can do it. But I was trained to be able to coach ADHD kids and adults. And what I found is that, as coaches, we give them that space. We give them that safe space to tell us what they need. What works for them and what doesn't, because typically people will tell them what to do. Yeah. But nobody really asks them what would work for you. Yes. So for some ADHDers, we don't like a lot of structure, but we need structure. So whether you're a kid or whether you're an adult, sometimes if you struggle with getting out the door on time, whether you're trying to get out the door on time for school or for work or for appointments, I think many of us can relate to that, especially us ADHDers, where it's debilitating, where it's something that we have to deal with almost on the daily. Yeah. So then we find out, okay, what do you need to make sure that you can get out the door not only on time, but without feeling frazzled, where you feel comfortable that you're like, okay, I'm leaving the door, I'm good. And so it could be simple structures like, for a child, is everything in your backpack the night before?
Yes.
Do you make your lunch the night before? And how do you remember to take it out of the fridge and put it into your backpack? Maybe put something on the doorknob to remind you, oh, I need to get my lunch from the fridge.
Right. And I
Some
need to do
people,
this as an adult.
yes, exactly. As an adult.
Yes, yes.
Does everyone, if parents or even adults complain about messiness, like disorganization, what structures have been put in place to help you put things in its place? So when you walk into the door, does everything just kind of like get strewn around, or do you have a place for your keys? Do you have a place for your shoes? Do you have a place where you can hang up your jacket? So you, like, as a family especially, I
Yes.
think you have to help each other build a structure that works for you, that's easy, and that you can build that habit, because we're training our brains.
I love it.
It's like going to the gym. You know, when you go to the
Yes.
gym, you're working on muscles. It'll kind of probably hurt at first, but then once you kind of get used to it and you're trying different machines, you'll find the right way
On
to
your shoes.
help you be your best. Maybe the right cardio, the right, weights, whatever the case may be.
So this strikes me. It strikes me that you and I have an advantage because we are coaches and we've had coach training. And I feel like the coach training I've had has given me strategies for managing my life. Not to say I don't need a coach, but I have this edge because a lot of these strategies you just talked about are strategies I've adopted for myself, because I recognize if I don't have a place for everything, I'm going to live in a disastrous home. And so I have to be extra intentional about making sure that there is some, I have to build the structure in because it doesn't come naturally for me. But I want to cut to, so you have, and I want to make sure I get it right, but you hosted the first global Muslim ADHDers virtual summit. And I want to know a little bit more about that and why, and the ways in which ADHD might be different within the Muslim community. I know how we talk about it in the Black community, and I know it's a stigma, and we're not doing medication, and there's just a lot of shame around it. And so I'm curious to hear about the cultural manifestation of ADHD.
Yeah, I mean, for me, when I first got my diagnosis, I didn't see anyone who looked like me and who admitted to having ADHD.
Yeah.
And I'm like, where are they? I can't be the only one. What's going on? But I call it the guilt, blame, and shame cycle, because, I come from a highly educated family. I have friends who are like professionals, and, and many of them are in the medical field. They're professors, they're business women, whatever you can imagine. I've probably got friends who are in those industries. And when I first tried to talk about ADHD with some of my friends, they would immediately say to me, oh, Farah, maybe you're just making excuses. You just need to try harder. And that would be like saying to someone who has issues with their eyes and they're like, having a hard time looking at the board or seeing something. Would we ever say to them, oh, you're just making excuses. You just need to try harder to see? We would never say that.
Right.
But I think it was because they saw me as someone who is successful in certain ways. So they figured, why would you be having trouble with things like being on time places and like not doing procrastinating? They just didn't get it.
Yeah.
And as a Muslim, one of the things that is part of my life is doing my daily prayers. And that is something that is so difficult for me. And that's a lot of guilt and blame and shame. And so when I would tell them this, they'd be like, what are you talking about? It's so easy. You just do it. Like Nike says, just do it. I'm like, yeah, that's not working for me. And I didn't quite understand why. So that's why I founded Muslim ADHDers, because I wanted there to be a safe space for us to talk about not only our ambitions in life, because many of us, education is very important. For many of us, we've got high ambitions. We're very loving people. We love our families. I mean, again, this is just a generalization, But the people that have been, coming up in this space also have this guilt and shame and blame when it comes to trying to be a good practicing Muslim,
Mm.
doing your daily prayers, making
Right.
sure you're spending quality time with your family and friends. When you are committing to doing something, when you're committing to being somewhere on time and you're constantly late, that's also part of our faith. Like, you have to be a person who keeps their word. And
Mm.
here we are struggling with all of these things, being good hosts. And, you should have a home that's always neat and clean and tidy so that when you're hosting someone, you're able to do that joyously. And for many of us, we hope that people don't come over because they're like, we don't want people to see our homes, because there'll be some spaces that are clean, but other places where we struggle with the clutter. So
Yeah.
that's actually part of our faith background, all of these things where our ADHD can make it very challenging. So I wanted to have that space. And in that summit, I had Muslim and non-Muslim speakers because
Mm.
I wanted the Muslim community to see that, look, you're not the only one who's
Yes.
suffering this. We've got people from around the world and
Yeah.
from all different backgrounds who can resonate with a lot of the things that, we find challenging.
Wow. So I should have asked that question a lot earlier, because now we are done. Because there's so much from what you just said that I would love to dive more deeply into, but we can continue the conversation. This somebody did ask, will this video be available? It remains on LinkedIn on Institute of Coaching's page. So continue the conversation, ask the questions. And Farah, if you can at some point jump on there and engage and answer any questions they may have, that would be amazing. But so we don't want to stop the conversation here. Please continue to engage everyone, whether it's here or with your clients, with your colleagues. Let's keep this conversation going. So I wanted to go ahead and close this out. Do you have any final words or any way that you want to leave anybody, leave us with this conversation?
Sure. So I did see in the comments there about stigma.
Yes.
As coaches, one of the things that I say, regardless of what kind of coach you are, we look to empower our clients, not enable them. We look to help empower them so that they can advocate for themselves, so that they build that self-awareness, so that they're able to have those conversations with others without that fear. And the more we do that as coaches, the more that we help our clients do that, then we are going to be able to destigmatize things like this. The more we show up and the more that we tell people about our experiences, the more others can relate and we can have those safe spaces. So for my fellow coaches, keep doing what you're doing, provide those safe spaces, and really actively listen and do those powerful questions to help them dig deeper. And for others out there, whether you're clinicians or you have family members who may be neurodivergent, have patience.
Mm.
They need your support. Give them the opportunity to tell you what they need in their innovative way to be their best.
Beautifully said. So beautifully said. Thank you so much, Farah. I appreciate you being here. If you all want to follow her and continue the conversation, please do. And I hope you all have a wonderful rest of the day, evening, or night, wherever you are. And goodbye, everyone.